search OU-SWSA, you'll find it. And then, so that will be available to everyone. Number 3, CEUs are going to be offered throughout the week, including for this session. And so just check the schedule and find which ones are offering CEUs. You do have the opportunity to get up to 10 CEUs this week. And after each session, we'll put up a link. I'll go ahead and throw that link up in this chat here in a second. And I see I have a question. Hold on just one second. We'll answer that question. I'll post a link where you can sign up to sign up for the CEUs. And if you're going to be attending more than one session each day, you can go ahead and wait and just fill out that form at the end of the day, because you only need to fill it out once. So let's see. Number 4, attendance is free for students here all week. And then if you are a professional, especially if you're seeking CEUs, we are asking for donations. We're suggesting $10 a person. And so I will also put up the link to offer a donation, which will go to scholarships, student awards, and general enrichment funds. So we'll very much appreciate that. And if you are seeking CEUs, just make sure that your full name is in your Zoom profile, or like that's the name that's being that you're recording as, because that's how we'll verify attendance and all that. So just make sure your full name is up there. And then that's it for housekeeping stuff. So I am very pleased to introduce Joy Ferrien. She is the Director of Agency Services and Disaster Response at the Community Food Bank of Eastern Oklahoma. She has worked at the food bank for over 5 years and has experience with growing direct programming, piloting a case management program, supporting the food bank's partner agency network. She got her MSW from OU and is passionate about shifting the approach to food insecurity into a comprehensive approach that addresses what it takes to end hunger. And so we are so excited to have her here to speak to us about food security in Oklahoma. She's going to share some slides, and thank you so much. Take it away, Joy.
All right, thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you all for being here and giving me this opportunity to speak today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, so bear with me while I do that. Okay, does everyone see the video or the slideshow there? Okay, perfect. So as you heard in the introduction, I'm going to be talking about food insecurity and a lot about how that overlaps with social work. So I will get started now. So first I want to talk about what food insecurity is, and especially what it looks like in Oklahoma. So the very first thing I want to acknowledge is the difference between food insecurity and hunger. Everyone experiences hunger. It's how we know we need to eat, right? So it's very different from food insecurity, because food insecurity is a lack of resources to provide food for the household. And even more specifically, the lack of resources to provide nutritionally adequate food at the household level. Because as all of us know, the cheapest food isn't necessarily the healthiest food options. Oklahoma has a high rate of food insecurity. We're one of 11 states over the national average. We're currently at 14.7% of food insecurity in Oklahoma, which comes out to about 583,570 individuals who may not know where they're going to get their food next. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that every single meal they don't have enough resources to eat that meal at the table or feed their whole family, but it could be at the end of the month or at the end of the week. And the frequency of these experiences are measured and put into 4 different categories of food security. I apologize. So we have high food security, marginal, low, and very low food security. Those in the very low food security category experience not having enough food the most often. And so they may skip meals even though they're hungry. They may cut portions in order to stretch food, those types of strategies when they're facing food insecurity. So one of the things we try to do as a food bank is educate about what food insecurity looks like. 97% of those served by the food bank are not homeless, and 58% of those we serve have at least one adult working in the home. For the 42% that don't have an adult working in the home, 62% of those have a disability or are a caregiver for someone in their household, and 26% are retired. So we're looking at 88% of those who don't have an adult working in the home that are unable to work for very specific reasons, whether they're physically or mentally unable to do so, or they're caregiving for someone, or retired and on a fixed income. And oftentimes that fixed income is not able to cover all the expenses in a month. So I like to mention this because it really eradicates any stereotypes of people receiving food assistance who aren't working, and people might think they're just kind of coasting by on the charitable food system, and that is definitely not the case. Also, 1 in 3 Oklahomans in poverty are single mother households, and then many people who experience food insecurity have to make trade-off decisions for essential resources. So this might look like choosing between paying a high medical bill, buying food during the week, or if they should go get prescriptions or pay the utility bill. Should I fill the car with gas to get to work this week, or should I skip a few meals this week? And those are the trade-off decisions that a lot of food insecure people in Oklahoma face. So very quickly, I want to talk about the community food bank. And I want to note the difference between a food bank and a food pantry. So food banks have a large warehouse to collect donations from distributors, retailers, Feeding America, if they're a member of the Feeding America network. And then they distribute those resources to smaller food programs, such as food pantries, meal programs, any other organization we partner with. And typically, food banks serve a large geographic region, whereas a food pantry distributes food directly to individuals and households, usually in one or a few communities. So sometimes it can get a little confusing when food pantries call themselves food banks. So I just wanted to clarify that a little bit there. So we are a food bank that covers 24 counties in eastern Oklahoma. We have about 350 different partner agencies operating almost 400 food assistance programs in our service area. We also have internal programs which directly feed through partnerships with school systems, medical clinics, rural communities, and more. So in fiscal year 20, the food bank distributed 32.8 million pounds of food, and 43% of that was fresh produce. And so you can see that some things here on the screen. The mission of the food bank is to feed the hungry of eastern Oklahoma through a network of partner agencies and engage our communities in ending hunger. And I'll be focusing a lot on that ending hunger component a little bit later in our talk today. So if we're looking at the food bank and its partner network, and all of this exists to serve food insecure in Oklahoma, why are there still people facing food insecurity? There are several barriers to accessing food assistance, and we have just a few of them here right now. Awareness, stigma, physical access, and individual experience are all reasons someone may not be able to access food assistance in their area. So awareness is just what it sounds like, a lack of awareness about what assistance programs exist. Stigma can occur when people are embarrassed or have negative attitudes towards seeking food assistance. Perhaps they might have fear due to immigration status and not being sure how accepting assistance may impact that. Physical access is where you'll see food deserts coming into play. So this is where a community doesn't have access to a grocery store, or maybe they only have access to a convenience store in their area that doesn't sell any fresh produce, and so they're very limited on their options. In an urban setting, if there's not a grocery store within 1 mile of a household, it's considered a food desert. And in a rural setting, if there's not a grocery store within 10 miles, it's considered a food desert. Physical access can also be a barrier for those who are homebound and don't have any way to access food resources. And then finally, individual experience can also stop people from continuing to access resources, especially if they've had a poor experience at a distribution, they felt that what they received didn't meet their needs. And we're going to talk about that a little later as well. So what else is going on here? Because we just looked at barriers to accessing food assistance programs, but these food assistance programs have to exist for a reason. So why are they so necessary? You can see a long list of things here that might be why a household can't make ends meet. All of these are systemic causes of food insecurity that allow food insecurity to continue and to increase. So you can see we have limited opportunities, whether in employment or education, disability or addiction, high rates of chronic diseases. Hunger, there's such an overlap between hunger and health that it's usually a bit of a cycle. If you're unable to access fresh, healthy food, it can cause chronic diseases that may require a specialized diet. It also may require seeing the doctor more often and high medical expenses. And so not being able to meet that specialized diet or pay those medical bills just continues the cycle there. We also have systemic inequalities that make it difficult for some groups to get ahead, so especially race, ethnicity, gender. So addressing these systemic causes to food insecurity is vital if we want to ever end hunger. So I talked a little bit earlier about the individual experience, and that can sometimes be a barrier to food assistance, and why sometimes a poor experience may cause someone not to continue to access food assistance programs. So recently there's been kind of a culture shift in the charitable food system, in which we can identify those places in which a poor experience may happen. It's something that we have been very intentional about trying to move away from, and shift away from kind of our old practices. So food banks have been around for about 40 years, and they were born into being emergency assistance. That was the immediate mindset was we have to serve people who don't have enough food. However, when you are viewing a problem as an emergency, certain values rise to the surface, such as serving as many people as possible as quickly as possible. And so the focus was largely on the transaction of giving food and serving as many people as we can, and just getting that done as quickly as possible. So this brings to mind long lines at food pantries and some really outdated mindsets. So, and I will say, these are not all gone. I've heard people say these today. So saying you can't be picky about the food you get because it's free, or you just get what you get because you have your hand out. Those types of mindsets are things we want to move away from. It does not provide dignity to the process, and these sort of experiences lead people to not want to continue to access these available resources. Also, oftentimes in these systems, you're going to get pre-packed bags. That just helps with the efficiency, and it continues the transaction. So kind of what we're shifting towards and really promoting as best practices is, instead of there being as much of the focus on serving the immediate emergency, is also looking at how we can prevent this. and what we can do to make efforts to get in front of the problem. Now, there's still going to be emergencies when natural disasters occur. During COVID, there were certain programs that sprang out of that that really was trying to serve as many people as possible. So there's still a time and place for that, but trying to bring in these values of dignity in that process is vital. So now we are trying to encourage being more focused on the relationship rather than the transaction. So food pantries in our partner network or meal programs, really getting to know the individual and what other needs they may have. Focusing on giving out food in a place of dignity, and then also the quality in both the interaction and in the type of food that we're giving out. That's the most important part about what we're doing here. So instead of having a long line at a pantry, maybe you can have this pantry with a system in which a household or a guest into the pantry can make an appointment ahead of time and know during that designated appointment, they don't have to wait in line, and they'll be given, or a small group of people who've made the appointment during that time will be given all the attention during that. We also really promote choice models. There is a continuum of choice in how people access food. So on the far side of the continuum with the pre-packed bags, you're seeing no choice. And you can see a partial choice in which people may be told, you know, these are your options today, which do you prefer? And then you go all the way over to full choice models, in which the pantry may be set up like a grocery store. And so a household can go through the pantry and browse the items and pick the items that they know they'll eat, that they don't know their household will eat. So something else about that full choice model is we're able to learn more about other ways we can offer that, especially during the pandemic. We always talked about that grocery store experience as the ultimate model. But we also learned there might be things we can roll out in which people are placing orders ahead of time. And so they're still getting that full choice model, but they're safe in a time of a pandemic. So there's more ways to offer choice, and we love to see innovation as our partners come up with new ways to do that. Another thing about choice in food assistance is that it provides respect for cultural relevance, dietary restrictions, or preferences. And then if people are picking those types of items, it reduces waste, because in a pre-packed bag, someone may not be able to eat every single item, or they may not know how to prepare every single item. So that is where that choice helps in that way as well. So another component of the best practices is offering wraparound services or referrals to other community organizations. And so this is why it's so important to be creating that relationship with the household seeking food assistance, because then you can learn other needs that they may have and be able to refer based on that. So kind of going off of that, I mean, we just talked a little bit about the individual experience and trying to provide a culture shift in the way we approach feeding people and meeting the need now. But there's also a culture shift in the way we view food insecurity altogether. And so this is a way in which we're viewing long-term food insecurity as an issue that does not exist in isolation. So Katie Martin, who I will mention a few times in this presentation, redefines hunger as a symptom of poverty caused by a broken system and rooted in social inequalities. And if we look at it that way, then the solution becomes quite different. So suddenly our solutions are beginning to diversify. We're never going to stop that feeding component, which we went through, and continually identifying best practices to better serve a household with dignity. But the question is arising about what can be done to prevent people from needing the assistance. And so this is kind of a roadmap of those different approaches. You can definitely see the diversification there. Each of these approaches builds off the previous approach. So it is an addition to the one that comes before it. So like I said, the food today, we're never going to go away from that. That's how food banks have operated for years. We'll only ever stop that when the need is not there, right? So building on that, there is an approach looking at food insecurity as a symptom to poverty. So the term shortening the line has become widely used in the charitable food system and Feeding America. And shortening the line activities include SNAP outreach, resource connection, case management programs, and more. So this is essentially trying to make it so there are less people that need to be in line to get food. So then these food for a lifetime approaches are the ones really seeking to just end hunger altogether. So this includes advocacy for policy changes, solutions to systemic inequalities, and more that we're all constantly thinking about. Kind of the dichotomy of food banking is ensuring that we're meeting all the needs that are out there while also seeking to no longer need to do what we do. So the latter approaches here, food tomorrow, food for a lifetime, are what allow us to work to make it so food banks are not necessary, not an essential part of society and the resources that are there. So with a background on the systemic causes of food insecurity and food insecurity as a symptom of a larger problem, in the fall of 2020, I developed and started piloting a case management program at the food bank. I was influenced by the More Than Food program, along with an organization called Empath that does mobility mentoring to elevate people out of poverty. So I developed this program with a goal to overcome the root causes of poverty by working one-on-one with individual households and doing this through long-term goal development. And the context for this, I mentioned Empath. This organization has completed a lot of research on the brain in poverty and how it operates. So this quote here at the bottom, poverty impacts how we analyze problems and set goals, and then how well we can navigate many challenges involved with getting ahead. Essentially, poverty and stress compromise the very same skills and behavior most necessary to lift people out of it. So the brain in poverty is in crisis mode or survival mode. The focus is on getting through the day, the next hour, the next crisis. And this right here is where we seek to intervene with the case management program and provide a safe place to take a step back, elevate the vision beyond the immediate crisis, and looking towards instead their long-term goals. So this is the program model of the case management pilot. It starts with that goal development, which I mentioned. The goals can vary in many ways, going way beyond education, employment, transportation. Those are kind of just the most common ones I saw. And the goals have to be identified by the participant. Otherwise, there's nothing driving them there. They don't have that motivation. If I'm telling them what they need to do, it's not going to help in any way. So starting with the very first meeting is looking at where they want to be and looking at that end goal there. And so the idea is for that goal development to lead them towards financial well-being. We also tried to meet the participants in the program right there as well by providing budgeting software, emergency utility assistance, referrals to free professional financial counseling resources. And then from there, the idea is that will lead them to better food security. We also provided bags of produce with every meeting the participants had with us, nutrition education along with that as well. And then you can see on the outside of the program model are these vital components that are at every step of the way. So first we have referrals to other community organizations, and then that follow-up component. So many other needs are coming out of when they are identifying these goals. And when there's needs outside of the scope of what we can provide, that is where we can make that referral. So for example, I was meeting with someone who their ultimate goal was getting a job, but they didn't have hot water in the home. And so it was just something that was just constantly weighing on them. And so being able to make a referral to a home repair organization that was able to provide that is something that is going to ease them on that path to get to their ultimate goal. And also that follow-up component is so important. Having someone who can complete that accountability and checking with them every time you meet. You know, we made this referral to help meet this need. Were you able to contact them? Or we called this organization together. What were the next steps? And so going from that follow-up to being able to help them develop that accountability in themselves, and also identify people in their support network, their support system, who can be accountability for them as well, was something that was really empowering to people. And then on the other side of this, having making those connections to public benefits assistance. So filling out those SNAP applications, getting people on Sooner Care. There's so many people who may not have known that they were eligible or weren't sure how to go about the process, or were just intimidated by that. So that really outlined the whole process as well. So throughout the pilot case management program here at the food bank, we were tracking financial well-being through the financial well-being scale, food security through the USDA food security survey, and then personal empowerment both through the sense of control scale and then also the adult hope scale. So we combined all those scales into one assessment that we were able to administer periodically throughout the program. So this program was just a pilot, and I will be concluding the pilot very soon. Actually, it's been a great learning experience. And you can see some of the feedback from participants who graduated from the program. And this was some really positive feedback about giving people a path forward, empowering people who lost their way. And you can see, you know, someone said it was a life changer. And so this is a great response for us to continue to offer these approaches to support people beyond simply providing food. So all these diverse approaches I mentioned earlier that fall into the category of food today, food tomorrow, food for a lifetime, that's going to continue to build on each other. And we at the food bank are going to continue to think and try out new solutions, expand programs to be able to lead people down this path and ultimately be able to reduce food insecurity and end hunger. I did want to mention, because I talked about some of these different programs and individuals throughout this presentation. Katie Martin has been a driving force for the culture shift at the food bank level, and then also at the Feeding America level, and personally a huge influence in my view of food insecurity. So I highly recommend reading the book Reinventing Food Banks and Pantries. And if you're a student at OU, the OU library has it there. And so that is a great in-depth dive into this topic if you're interested in more. the More Than Food program was also highly influential in developing that case management program I worked on. And then I also recommend looking into Empath if you're interested in learning more about their mobility mentoring program. So food insecurity is not an isolated issue. It's an issue that every social worker will encounter. So whether this is at the micro level and you're connecting individuals with food assistance resources, or at the macro level of advocating for systems and policy changes, or somewhere in between in all of the places I've talked about here. And there's a broad overlap between poverty, health, food insecurity, so it's all interwoven together. So my goal today has been to share the way that food banks are shifting their approaches to food insecurity, and how those shifting approaches reflect so many social work values as well. And then also one of my goals was to share the complexities of food insecurity and what it takes to end hunger. I'm a very solution-focused thinker, and I truly believe that if we want to end hunger, we have to believe it is possible. I have heard people say, you know, it's never going to happen. It's not possible. And I truly think if we say that, we're just cutting ourselves off at the knees. So, you know, we may never eradicate every single instance of food insecurity, but we can provide programs and solutions that intervene in advance of food insecurity becoming a long-term problem. And then ideally, food banks will no longer need to be as vital to the fabric of society as they are now if we can provide this network of solutions and approaches here. So if anyone has any questions, I think we do have some time here at the end of this session. You're also always welcome to reach out to me. I have my email listed here, and I'd be happy to talk on this topic more as well. So again, thank you all for taking the time to listen and giving me the opportunity to speak. If anyone has anything they'd like to add, feel free to jump in.
We had at least one person ask if the slides will be available somehow, if you're willing to share those somehow.
Yeah, I absolutely can.
Yeah.
I can provide them to you if you have a way of pushing them out to everyone, or I can, if you have any solutions, I'd be happy to listen to those as well.
Okay, maybe I'm trying to think of the easiest way to do that. Should have thought of that previously, but
that's okay.
Yeah, if I can drop in my email, and I can, if anybody is interested, they can email me, and I can get it out to people.
Okay, yeah. And then we do have a few questions in the chat that I'd be happy to address. The rising cost of fuel. Yes, that is such a good question. There are so many people that, you know, I've already heard people saying, you know, I can't come pick up food because of I don't have enough money to put gas in my car. So it definitely adds barriers, and it's definitely a place for us to think about new solutions to be able to provide delivery-based approaches. We do have many of our food pantries in the food banks network that offer delivery to homebound individuals. And we are actually looking at identifying our own pilot type of program in which we can have people sign up, and it is something that we might be able to go on and make that delivery. There are partnerships that DoorDash is creating with Feeding America, so that DoorDash drivers are the ones picking up the food from the food bank and delivering that out to individuals who sign up. So it's definitely something we're looking at. A lot of food banks in the Feeding America network are looking at it as well. And then this question was about how long the pilot program was. I am still wrapping up meeting with a few program participants, so it is still going. So I think we're looking at, it's been going for about a year and a half now. Sorry, I'm just reading questions. When do the clients decide when they feel they don't need support anymore in the program? So that is yes. It is ultimately up to each program participant. We don't have a specific end date in the program. There are times that I would sort of suggest, we have built on all these tools a lot of, I see these strengths in you, and I think you have the tools to move forward in seeking these goals together. Long-term goals are not going to all be met in the short-term program that the case management program was. So it was a lot of being able to identify strengths in people and helping them identify them in themselves to continue to move forward along that path.
I actually have a quick question. Are there any more in the chat?
Not that I saw in the chat.
Okay. I am always so curious about the intersection of like food insecurity and the food bank and like agriculture. And so does the food bank work with any local farms to like bring up, or is that part of the plan?
That's a great question. Yes, actually, we're in talks with it's DHS and the Department of Agriculture. We're working on creating a partnership to identify local farms. It's been driven by a grant opportunity to identify underserved, or sorry, that's not the right thing. Minority farmers, that's what it was. And so being able to make that connection with those farmers, what we're looking at is connecting those growers directly to our partner programs. So that might be the pantry or the meal program, and they can pick up the produce directly from the farmer, and the food bank would be able to subsidize that purchase for the partners. So that is something we're actually looking at and in talks about right now.
Thank you.
All right, do we have any other questions for Joy? Well, Joy, thank you so much. That was a really informative presentation. I enjoyed it quite a bit. And I'll make sure to get a copy of the slideshow from Casey as well, and we'll get that turned in for the CEU. So thank you all so much for that. So we're going to take a little break. Our next session number 4, is actually for students only. It's practicum panels. There'll be a Tulsa panel and a Norman panel. So if you're a student and you're interested in either one of those, you can attend that. We'll come back here to this link at 3 o'clock for our last session of the day. It'll cover school social work with the Association of School Social Work of America. And Capella Howard, she'll talk from 3 to 3:45 about their organization. That one will also offer CEU, so make sure to come back to this link at 3 o'clock if you're interested. Otherwise, thank you all so much for participating. We put the link in the chat for donations and the link in the chat for the CEU form. Remember to do that just once a day. I'll hang out on here for about 5 more minutes if anybody has any other questions.
What link do we use for the student panel, the Tulsa one?
Okay, let me grab that and I will drop that in the chat.
Thank you.
I see the question in the chat. It's going to be a lot of student panels. Students are going to be asking or answering questions along the lines of, what do you know now that you wish you would have known before? It's really geared towards prospective students and newer students who are in the program. But you're welcome to set in if you would like.